Shabbat Shalom. Happy Sabbath. This morning we would like to look at the discord of Bullrush worship. The discord of Bullrush worship. And so I would like to start with the book of Chizayon, the book of Revelation, and chapter 3, because Yeshua, in his mercy to us, he sent us a letter. In fact, he had sent 7 letters to 7 different assemblies, and we are living in the era of Laodicea, and therefore it behooves us to read and to study the content of this letter that he has sent to us, because we are prone, to chronicle man's achievements, and then we are in awe of them. We fall fawningly prostrate before them because of their achievement. And so this morning we want to look at he who is greatest among all men, our Creator. He has no peer. Because as I read this letter sent to Laodicea, in spite of the fact that we genuflect before men because of their attainments in life, the word here is telling me that man is depraved. Man is depraved. And that should wake us up. So come with me to Chizayon chapter 3, and we will begin at verse 14. The word says, "And to the messenger of the assembly of Laodicea, write the Amen, the trustworthy and the witness, the beginning of the creation of Yahweh says this, I know your works, that you are neither cold nor hot. I would that you were cold or hot. So because you are lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I am going to vomit you out of my mouth." Wow. Despite of the way we perceive ourselves and the resumes that we carry about to advertise ourselves to other people, degrees that we show to people to let them know we are the most degreed civilization throughout history, the word wants you to know that we are not only depraved, but we are dunces. He says, I'm going to vomit you out of my mouth because you make me sick. Your attitude, your behavior, your conduct, your speech. And this letter is for us. And we dare not write on the back of this envelope saying, return to sender. Because he says, I know your works, and he knows our address. So we cannot provoke him by sending it back. We have to make sure that we read it, understand the content, and make the necessary changes that is to be made. He says we're lukewarm, insipid. So because you're lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I am going to vomit you out of my mouth, because you say, rich I am, and I am made rich and need none at all, and do not know that you are wretched and pitiable and the poor and the blind and naked. Did you get that? He says, we the people in the era that we live, the Laodicean assembly, we're not only blind, but we're naked, we're wretched, and we're pitiable. That's lamentable. We are a people who celebrate, at least the heathens do, each year. They have Pride Month, and they celebrate certain events. And it is a culture that boasts its billionaires and its millionaires and its entertainers, its great singers. And that's the perception we have of the people living in this area, this time of life. But when the great I Am looks at us, he says, you're rich. You think you're rich, but you're poor. You're naked because you're not walking in righteousness. And because you're blind, you cannot even see that you're naked. And so, as we look at our subject today, I wanted to present this as a kind of a periscope to frame our subject so that we understand the depravity of man and how far he has sunk, because he's no longer drinking from the stream of Mount Sinai, where the water was clean, but he's drinking now downstream in Guyana. Guyana, that's where the rubbish heap is in Jerusalem. Guyana, and in the English we say hell. That's where man has reached. And so we want to go back in time this morning and look at our ancestors and how they lived, because implicit in the fact that a letter has come to us in Laodicea is the notion that you should have known better. Why should I have known better? Why should you have known better? Because we have their history. We saw what they did and what they should have done, and we should make the dichotomy between the two. But we see this ceaseless trenody of lamentation throughout the scriptures, because man keeps going down, down, down. Even like Samson, he kept going down to Gaza. He kept going down to Tinmah. He kept going down. And so we want to remind ourselves as to what took place in the time of Moshe or Moses and Mount Sinai. So I want you to come with me to the book of Shemot, that Exodus, and we will look at the 32nd portion of it. That's chapter 32. And I'm going to read verse 17 first before I go to the beginning of it, because I'm reading this for a particular emphasis. Verse 17, and I'm reading from the Septuagint Kodesh scriptures, because this is one of the original translation of the Hebrew into Greek. So it's Exodus chapter 32 and verse 17. And the word says, and Hoshea, that's Joshua, hearing the sound of the people shouting, said to Moshe, that's Moses, this is a sound of war in the camp. It is a sound of war in the camp. To which he replied, "It is not the sound of men singing alternately as they rush to battle, nor is it in the sound of men answering each other on the retreat, but the sound of responsive strains at a revel, which I heard." So Joshua, Moshe's understudy, is Moses' assistant, the Ben of Nun, the son of Nun, a man born in Egypt's bondage, being also one of the 12 spies, and latterly the conqueror of Jericho. That's the Joshua that I'm talking about this morning. So while at Mount Sinai with pensive ears, he dimly saw but sprightly heard the sound of music, the cacophony of which was jarring discordantly against the sublime ambience of Mount Sinai. But this time, the Israelites are way into the throes of apostasy. Bullrush worship, a decision that sends shiver down the prophetic spine of unborn generations. Joshua heard the sound of music. This is not Julie Andrews. It's a kind of lamentation that he heard. That's what he heard. But it was unto the people, but they knew it not. It was a kind of a requiem for the people. And so the word here reminds us this morning that this is the behavior of our ancestors. And as we ponder, and I mean pensively, we cannot plumb, we cannot conceive how a people just coming out of Egypt, they saw the miracles. Moses throwing down, as did Aaron, rods turning into serpent, the 10 plagues culminating into the death of the firstborn, going through the Red Sea. And then they are reduced to a behavior that is incomprehensive. And we're trying to make sense of that this morning because these people are our ancestors, are they not? And so this morning we're going to look at this bulrush story, this calf, this cow, this bull, the Apis bull that I believe they were just mimicking that they brought from Egypt. This is it. We're going to look at this morning because it is quite liquid in our minds this morning. And for this very reason, we will decant and rebottle it to distill the flavor of truth. We want to do that. Thereby, we will gradually pour this distilled wine of truth into the containers, the empty bottle. That's us who have come this morning. And so each of us will be filled as we decant and distribute the truth of this word. And we're not going to disturb so much the sediments in the bottle. We're just going to leave them as they are so you can see it for yourself. But it says, Joshua heard sound. couldn't make out exactly what it was. It's like sometimes when we go to certain churches and we hear the drum beats, which is really not an instrument. We know that. The drum is not, it doesn't play harmony. It doesn't play melody. It's just a beat. And churches are filled with drums these days. But if ever we knew where the drum came from, we have to go to that part of Jerusalem we call Gehenna, where at the time of Manasseh, king of Judah, and other kings, they would bring their children there to be offered to Molech, the idol, and be killed. And they would use the drums, beat them hard to drown out the sounds of the crying children. Today, those drums have been moved from that area. The dung heap, Gehenna, to the churches of worship. And nobody bats an eyelid. And we hear the same theme in our culture today. Tells you that prophecy is really a cycle. Because even as you hear the politicians trying to merchandise and sell hope, one wonders whether it is indeed dope being sold. Because they're telling us that women need their reproductive rights. They need it. They need to be able to dispense with a child unborn that they don't want. That's what we hear, and we're hearing consistently. But the word said that Israel at one time did exactly that. They wanted their reproductive rights. They would have the children, but they would take them and put them into the lap of Molech and offer them as sacrifice. And then Solomon said, what has been will continue to be, nothing new at all under the sun. And so this morning we want to look through this thing. Come with me to the first verse now. I read verse 17 first of chapter 32. Now when the people saw that Moshe delayed to come down, when he delayed to come down, where was he? He's in Mount Sinai. He had gone to see Yah. He had gone to pick up a copy of the contract, the covenant agreement that Yah had spoken in chapter 20 of Shemot, Exodus, to let the people know how they should live. He was speaking morality to them, and like, any good mediator is going to get a copy of that document to give to the people, or at least to keep it in their midst. So he's gone up, and the word says, when the people realized that he had gone for a while, they employed that impudent appellation, that Moses. They'd lost respect now. That man. We don't know where he is. The word says, and Yah consistently said in the word, they were stiff-necked, but they were also loose in the tongue. That man. They use the demonstrable pronoun. That man. What are they doing? They are defining something definitive. That man, not any man. That's the same man who mediated and brought them all the way from Egypt. And right now, no respect. You got to understand what I'm saying. They are at Mount Sinai, and they have the commandments given to them 50 days after Passover. 50 days. So that's the third month. Are you with me? That's the third month. And they don't call a search party to go and find out where he is. That's how people are today. It matters not what you do for them or what you give them. They just don't care. They care about self. It's here. They had soon forgotten that when Yah spoke in chapter 20, the mountain shook and the trees shivered at the voice of Yah. They were now going to do. You see, once you get a people out of Egypt, that's the easy part. But how do you get Egypt out of them? And that's why often you see people come into the assembly, but they bring the world and their attitude, their behavior, their ideas, and they want to implement that right there in the church, even as they did at the foot of Mount Sinai, when the great I am, that Shekinah glory, stood there. The impudence is seen in their behavior, as we see it now in churches all over the place, because nobody seems to have a good idea of what worship looks like. In chapter 19, 5 and 6, he said, if you obey me, you will be unto me a kingdom of priests. You will. But today, we don't see that. People turn up to the churches, to the assemblies, anytime they want to. They go to work on time because they get paid for that. They are more obedient to their bosses than they are to the boss, the great I am. Remember the Sabbath day. They said, no, we go on Sunday, the first day of the week. I'm just trying to show you the depravity of man today. Its roots lies deep right there at Mount Sinai. It's there. That man Moses. Thereupon Aaron said to them, take off your golden earrings. Now, a lot of people wear earrings these days and they think nothing of it. When the children of Israel went down to Egypt to live, when Joseph and the others, they never brought any earrings. Never brought any. And in fact, we see in Genesis, Bereshit chapter 35, that when Jacob was going back to Bethel to build an altar to worship Yah, he told the people in his household to take off their earring, and he pushed it under the oak tree. But today, we come to the assemblies and we see people with great earrings, false hair, uncovered heads, and showing aspects of their anatomy that nobody has business to see except their husband. But that's a carryover from our ancestors of Mount Sinai. And so we must study it, because Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 11, he said these things, all of them were written for your admonition, whom the end of the earth is come. It's for you. The letter about Laodicea, it's for us. It's showing me, showing you our condition. It's a portrait of what you look like. Just think of it. You go to the studio to take a photograph because you're intent on making an album. And when you come home, the portrait that the photographer took and gave to you, you look at it and say, that's not me. That's what the churches are doing. They think they're doing all right. Great loud music. In fact, some people go to church only for what they call praise and worship. They don't come for the word. If you're going to get high, I say get high on the word of Yah. But that's not what they come for, the music. Oh, the young people, they love it. And so they give people what they want. Yah says give them what they need, not what they want. And so the word says, verse 2, you notice how deliberate I am being slow so that it saturates our minds with emphasis. Thereupon Aaron said to them, take off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives and daughters, and bring them to me. So all the people took off the gold earrings which were in their ears and brought them to Aaron, and he received them at their hands. And having made of them a molten bull, in your Bible it says calf, a molten bull, he fashioned it. I want you to keep that in your mind, because later on he tells Moses that he just threw them in and a bull came out with a graving tool and said, listen to Aaron, these are thy gods of Israel who brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. Who brought them out? Yah says, I brought you out on eagle's wings. Now listen to them. Again, that impudent mannerism. I call it the impudence of incident. This golden calf. And these are thy gods that brought you out of the land of Egypt. I mean, how do you conceive that? That these people who had seen so much, had experienced so much, the love of Yah had enveloped them and had showed them such grace. It's like us, isn't it? Yah gives us a job, gives us a house, a husband, a wife, children, and on the Sabbath day that he wants to see us, we say we're going to the market. We're going to enjoy ourselves. We're going to the beach. We're going to a party. Oh, my friend is having a party. I'm too busy. That's how we talk. And so we are just like our ancestors, no different. And so listen to Aaron. Verse 5, and when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made proclamation saying, tomorrow is the festival of Yah. So rising early in the morning, he caused what? He caused all burnt offerings to be brought up and offered a sacrifice of thanksgiving, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. Let's get a zoom lens out and look at this again, because in reading it, you may just fleetingly pass by and miss the essence of it. Aaron built an Apis bull. The drawings of which that were indelibly printed in his mind came from Egypt. Is the architect, The architects were in Egypt. And he probably was an apprentice down there because the Egyptians, they worshipped other gods. They did. And we see that in Joshua chapter 24, and you can read verse 2 and verse 14. You see that. So did Abraham's father. So we sometimes have this pitiful image of the slaves in Egypt, that they were just working slaves. No, they were worshiping idols in Egypt. So we need to understand that for ourselves. But let's get back to verse 5 and 6. It says, Aaron built an altar, and he made a proclamation. He said, tomorrow is the feast of Yah. Hold it there. You and I know that Yah has declared in Leviticus chapter 23 all his feast days. We have Passover. Remember, they left during the season of Passover. According to Numbers chapter 33 and verse 3, they left on the 15th day of Abib or Nisan. That's the season of Passover. We know that. And so 50 days from that is Pentecost. So they're in the season of Pentecost or Shavuot here at Mount Sinai. So we're now leaving the third month because, you know, in chapter 19, we're told they arrived at Mount Sinai on the first day of the third month. We understand that. And so we're trying to do the chronology of the time so we get a picture of what we're dealing with. Moses then, after Yah spoke morality to the people on Mount Sinai, went up and spent 40 days up there. We don't know what time during the 40 days this happened, but if you put 50 and 40, what's that? That's 90, isn't it? So we know, and we can, by way of deduction, say, Yah has made no command, have no request of us that any feast should be in the third or the fourth month after. None. Aaron says, tomorrow is the festival of Yah. Tomorrow is the feast day. So in the fourth month, Aaron is saying we're going to have a feast, and who are we going to have it to? We're going to have it to Yahweh. Well, understand where I'm going with this, because it is in the same way Yahweh said, remember the seventh day to keep it holy, and the contemporary church said, we are not coming on the seventh day, we're going on the first. We're going to have a feast on the first day of the week. Can you do that? And the same way it angered Yah here, it angers him now because you've changed his day, or at least you're attempting to. But understand something else. Aaron and the children of Israel were doing this kind of worship in the name of Yah. Are you with me? So what was it? Aaron was not trying to make another mighty one. No, that's not what Aaron was doing. Aaron was not trying to make another god, as some have concluded. That's not what he was doing. Aaron seemingly was trying to make a representation of Yah. But he had forgotten something. Yah said, don't make any graven image. You can't represent me by image. So he broke the second commandment, isn't it? Isn't that so? He said, don't do that. Let's go back to Exodus 20 to remind ourselves. Then Yahweh spoke these words, saying, I am Yah, thy Elohim, who brought thee out of the land of Egypt. Who brought you out? It's clear. Yeah. They said it was idols. Out of the house of bondage. That's what Egypt means. Thou shalt have no other Yah but me. Did you get that? You don't listen to your boss at work, your supervisors. You don't do that. You don't even listen to your pastor or the conference. You listen to me. I have no other Yah but me. You see, the question emerging from this is very simple. What is it in your life that has displaced the preeminence of Yah in your life? What is it? I want to make this point also that you too have your golden calf. It may not look like Aaron's golden calf, but whatever it is that is in your life that has displaced Yah is your golden calf. You may think to yourself, but I don't bow down to these golden calf. But it may be your car. It may be your house, your prized MBA, PhD, master's degree. It may well be that. Your attainment of life. I am now CEO, Chief Executive Officer. And so I've attained this, and I've been there, and I've met that man. And the expectation is that other people will fall at your feet, and they genuflect, usually they do. And fawningly, obsequiously, they do. And so you feel like you're a somebody. And you create this aura that nobody else can feel that sense of somebodyness in your presence. But I just want to go back with you to Revelation 3. You're blind. You're naked. You're wretched. You think you're rich. You're poor. You're insipid. I'm going to spew you out. Yah says in verse 3 of chapter 20 of Shemot, Exodus, thou shalt have no other Yah beside me. Thou shalt not make for thyself an idol. Did you hear that? For the likeness of anything which is in the heaven. That's what Aaron was doing, making a representation. Don't make a likeness of anything in the heaven, or in the earth below, or in the waters under the sea. Thou shalt not worship them. That's exactly what he was doing. He built an idol, and the word says he used graven tools to do it. That's what he did. And so the people now have found themselves between the rock, literally, because the rock is Yeshua, and a hard place. A hard place. And then perhaps you'll understand now, Moses feels the weight of this experience. And he begins to cry out to Yah because he sees something happening. And Yah is pleading with him, you better go down because you are the one who brought them here. Because the moment we turn away from Yah, obviously we belong for somebody else. And the other thing that we don't want to miss, this happened when Moses was not in town. What is it that I'm saying? I'm saying when people are over-dependent on other people, their leaders, their pastor, their priest, this is what happened. When the priest is not there, they're in disarray. Moses is gone, and only for 40 days, and the people don't know what to do now. We ought not to have that kind of obsession for human beings. Give glory to Yah. He has no peer. And only he has hands big enough to deal with your heart. And so when people don't have a leader, they'll create one. They will create a leader and have that leader lead them. We want a leader. They haven't really left Egypt very long. But their dependence is such that they were always depending on Pharaoh. Even when they had to make bricks without straw. You know, some people just like to take instructions. They cannot think on their own volition. And one of the greatest problem we have in the world today is that people don't think. They outsource their thinking to other people. Pastors, doctors, nurses, businessmen, preachers who motivational speakers, therapists, psychiatrists. And nobody listens to the word of Yah. So Yah heard it. Says, Moses, go down, because the people that you've brought here, they have slipped into disarray. The point is that Yah doesn't joke around with idolatry. It doesn't. Go down and see what they're doing. And Moses now understands the gravity of the situation. He begins to lament over it and make supplication for the people. Yeah, just, you brought them here, and if ever you annihilate them and wipe them off, the people around, the surrounding nation, they're going to think you brought them here just to do that. Your name is at stake. Your name is at stake. And so he begins to plead, and Yah wants him to know that he will destroy those who sin against him, not the ones who don't. Are you with me? And so this frustratingly smug tone, this incident of impudence, the appellation employed by them, that Moses. It's died down now, because even the trees are still, pensively looking on. Leaves have become alive to the voice of Yahweh. Oh, yes. And so that uproarious noise that we heard earlier, or Joshua heard, is gone. No longer the same thing. That extremely laudable music and the nakedness has died down, because Yah speak. And it's now a woeful ballad being spoken by Moses. Because that divine hears with precision. Had heard it long before Moses or Joshua heard. In fact, he knew that it would happen before it happened. He knew all that. But the way Yah works, and we mustn't preclude this thought from the whole situation, that when Yah chooses a man to lead his people, he wants to know the commitment of that man. He wants Moshe to demonstrate his commitment. Yah says, I'm going to destroy them and let you have another group of people. I'll build you another nation. If a shepherd hears that his sheep is going to be destroyed, how should the shepherd respond? Just like Moses. Please, yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. If you're going to do that, then blot me out too. And Moses is putting his own life on the line for his sheep. That's what Yah expects from the pastors today, from the bishops, from the priests. A man like Moses, who knows that they're wrong, but will plead their cause to Yah and ask for forgiveness, and then teach them the right thing so that they can do it and be examples in righteousness. If you obey me, says Yah, you will be a people looked on by the world and appreciated, but the glory is mine. So Yah wants us to understand that. But you know, like a new baby in town, sometimes we have to employ pre-mastication or partial digestion. You chew the food and put it in the baby's mouth. Some call it kiss feed. So make sure that baby eats the food. Some congregations are like that. You have to kiss feed them. And Israel were so dependent on Moses. They were kiss feed, told what to do. Now Moses is not there, and they have to create something else to feed them. Sadly, it was an idol, a cow. But we're going to move on. I just wanted you to have that backdrop of an experience so that we can now turn to the book of Malachim, 1 Kings, chapter 12, and we're going to look at verse 25. It says, then Jeroboam rebuilt Shechemah on Mount Ephraim and dwelt there, and he went out thence and built Phanuel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, behold, now the kingdom will revert to the house of David, if the people go up to Jerusalem to offer sacrifices in the house of Yah, for the heart of the people will turn to Yah and to Rehoboam, that's Solomon's son, the king of Judah, and they will kill me. Therefore the king took counsel and went and made 2 calves of gold and said, they're now in the promised land. And the question is, what has changed? They didn't build 1 calf like Aaron, they built 2. Now, understand what's going on here. The kingdom is divided. And Yah had stipulated quite clearly in his word that worship should take place in Jerusalem. That's where you should go. If Yah says, worship me on the 7th day, you don't give him the 1st day. You're being foolish. And it doesn't matter how well you think you have done it. He says, you're giving a naked offering. Don't do it. So Jeroboam here now, king in the north, realizes that most of the people are going down to Judah and Jerusalem to worship. But he doesn't want that. It's like the bishop or the pastor who realize that a lot of people now are keeping the Sabbath, but he doesn't want to be in line with the Sabbath. He wants to be in line with Emperor Constantine, who in AD 321 changed the Sabbath to the first day of the week and said you shouldn't Judaize, you shouldn't keep the feast days, and you shouldn't keep the 7-day Sabbath. And most people today don't even know that what they are doing in keeping the first day of the week, they're following Constantine. It's sad, isn't it? It's sad. So what did he do? He changed the day from the Sabbath to Sunday, first day of the week. And so we're talking years now. So let's go back to Jeroboam. It says that he built 2 calves of gold and said to the people, rest satisfied in respect of your going up to Jerusalem. Behold, these are thy gods, O Israel. Did you hear that? These are thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And they placed one of them in Bethel and the other in Dan. And they were giving worship. Many people today have Jeroboam's religion. That's what you have. You cannot change the day that he has. Jeroboam did this in the 8th month. The word says. That means the Feast of Tabernacle is in the 7th month, and Jeroboam changed it to the 8th month, just like they changed the 7th-day Sabbath to the first day of the week, or the 8th day. We've got to understand that. The 8th day is Sunday if you count 8 days consistently. So you have Jeroboam religion. This is where your worship came from. Understand that. I want to make that clear to you. And you tell people that, and they make no change. So they continue in Jeroboam's religion. They continue to do that. So what we need to do now is turn to the book of Acts. Let's go there. We're in the Testament made new. And we're going to be looking at chapter 7. And this is Deacon Stephanus, or we call him Stephen. And Stephen is here addressing the Sanhedrin, people who should know better. And he's giving them a history lesson of what transpired. And let's start from verse 37. Stephen says, this is the Moses which said unto the children of Israel, O prophet, a prophet shall Yahweh your Elohim raise up unto you of your brethren like unto me, him shall ye hear. He's quoting Deuteronomy 15 and verse 18. That's what he's quoting. Or is it 18 and verse 15? But he's quoting that because Moses had said that Yah is going to raise up a prophet unto me when he comes. He's talking about Yeshua. That's what he's dealing with. Verse 30, he said, This is he that was in the congregation of the wilderness with, in some Bible, it says this is the church that was in the congregation in the wilderness with the angel which spake to him in the Mount Sinai, and with our fathers who received the living oracles to give unto us. And so he is reminding them what happened during that particular time. And he's going through studiously. The text I want to confirm really is Deuteronomy 18 and verse 15. And let me read it as I emphasize the point. Yahweh thy Elohim will raise up unto thee a prophet from the midst of thee, or thy brethren like unto me, unto him ye shall hearken. So let's go back to the book of Acts. I just want to make sure that, the perspicuity of the word is such that you don't um, think of it any other way, but in the clarity that Yah presents it. And it behooves us who are presenting it to make sure that you get the correct thing. And that's why I went back to make that clear. Verse 38 again for emphasis. This is he that was in the wilderness with the angel which spake to him in the Mount Sinai, and with the fathers who received the living oracle. Did what? The living oracles to give to us. With our fathers, but our fathers would not obey, but thrust him off from them, and in their hearts turned back into Egypt. He thrust them off. You understand what they did? The word thrust there is telling you they rejected the kind of worship that Yah offered. Thrust off. Yah wanted them to worship a particular way that he designed for them, but they thrusted off. They rejected. Yah wanted you to worship on the Shabbat and give him praise and keep the Shabbat holy, and also the feast days, all of them, because they are for every generation, all generations of people. But they thrust them off. The priest of today, the pastors, the bishop, they have, like our ancestors, thrust them off, and nobody keeps them, very few. And so Stephen is reminding them, remember what I'm doing here. I'm reading from the New Testament. So you can't say these were done away with now, because Deacon Stephen, who is speaking right in front of Yah, but he's addressing what? The Sanhedrin. And he's letting them know that you have thrust it off. And he says in verse 39, whom our fathers would not obey, but thrust him off from them, and in their hearts turned back to Egypt. Now understand what Stephen is saying. That although you might be worshiping in London, New York, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Manchester, location-wise, physically, you're there. Just like they were in the wilderness, but they're back in Egypt. It's not location, it is attitudinally, mentally, emotionally, you're in Egypt. And that's what Paul picks up in Timothy first, 1 Timothy chapter 4. Paul says, and the Ruach speaks expressly that in the last days, the nowadays, many will leave the faith, but they will remain in the church. Understand that. You can be in the church for many years and you're still out of faith and out of covenant. Many are on the way to the lake of fire while being in the church because they have left the faith. And that's what Stephen here is trying to explain to the people, that they have gone back to Egypt, but they did not go back to Egypt physically, but in their faith practice. Their spoken theology was not the same as their lived faith. There was a dichotomy between the two. So when we juxtapose that lifestyle in the wilderness with our lifestyle today in the contemporary world, we see no difference. In method, perhaps, but the attitude is the same. And so Stephen continues. Then, verse 42, then Elohim turned and gave them up to worship. Did you hear that? He says, if you continue in the way that you're worshiping, even though you've been doing it for 10, 20, 30 years, Yah has already given you up because you're not obeying him. So you're lost in the church. And now you understand the parable of the lost coin. The lost coin was lost in the house, right in the church. And the person looking for it, the woman had to light a lamp. But we're told in Revelation 18 and verse 23, the lamp has gone out. So even that woman can't see it. The lamp has gone out. Otherwise, you would be able to see. Laodicea, you're blind, says the word. And so Elohim turned and gave them up to worship the host of heaven. As it is written in the book of the prophets, O ye house of Israel, have ye offered to me slain beasts and sacrifices by the space for 40 years in the wilderness? Yea, he took up the tabernacle of Molech. Did you hear me? Molech. And the star of the deity Rephaim, figures which he made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon. Did you? Let's hold it there. Let's pause and let's turn our searchlight on that text and let me read it again for emphasis. Verse 43. Yea, ye took up the tabernacle of Molech and the star of your deity Rephaim, figures which he made to worship him, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon. I want to emphasize it, and I want to put the spotlight on that text simply for this reason. This star of Rephaim, do you know what it is? It is a controversial topic because many of the people who consider themselves Jews, they have this two triangle, six-sided star that they call the Star of David. Another school of thought said that six-sided star is not the Star of David, it is a star of Rephaim. And if that is true, Stephen here is addressing that, saying it belongs to Molech, that type of worship, not the Star of David. I leave that for your own consideration and for you to do your own research on it. But it's very important that we don't get drawn into the populist idea of things. We must always go back to the word to check it out and to see whether these things that are spoken are true. We've got to do that. And we then find ourselves almost inevitably in the book of Numbers. So come with me to the book of Numbers. And we will dilate also a little in chapter 25. Chapter 25. Because we, as I indicated earlier, we want to decant and distill this thing so that by the time we are through, you can pour this into the empty vessels that we brought here and it will be filled. This is the wine of truth, Yah's word. And he wants us to drink because in Revelation 17, there's another woman there who has a bowl filled with wine, the wine of her fornication, and the whole world is drinking from her bowl. And so we want to drink from the right goblet, if you understand what I'm saying. Chapter 25 of Numbers. And Israel abode in Shittim. That's what that word says. Are you with me? They abode where? Well, I want to read it from the Septuagint. The Septuagint said, while Israel abode in Satin, that's Sattin. See the difference in word? The people profaned themselves to commit whoredom with the daughter of Moab. They profaned themselves. Are you with me? Now understand what's happening here, because the people were now nearing the promised land. They could look over the Jordan River in their binoculars and they would see from a distance the promised land. They're almost there, almost home. 40 years is out. And like us now, we know that we are in the 120th Jubilee. And because we are feast-keeping people, we know that the Jubilee is 50 years. We know that. And therefore, all we have to do is to go back to the chapter 6 of Bereshit, Genesis, where Yah spoke to Noah and let him know the probation period is 120 years. So what we do, we just multiply 50 by 120, we get 6,000. So we know we are in that 120th Jubilee, the end of time. We know that. So we cannot afford to allow Satan, that man, to steal our joy. So we can look over Jordan, and what do I see? We see the band of angels, don't we? We see them, and they were at the same place. But Balak the king had hired a prophet. You know, be careful when you go to church that your pastor is not an hireling. You need a shepherd, not an hireling, because he's working for money. Are you with me? Your bishop. People have bought them off, so they will tell you what the paymaster wants you to hear rather than what Yah said you should hear. And that's what we're dealing with here in the book of Numbers. They abode in satin, and the people profaned themselves to commit whoredom in the daughters of Moab, because Balak called Balaam and said, I want you to curse these people. The question is, how can you curse anyone who Yah has blessed? Did you hear me? And let me develop that theme, because I think we sometimes miss this thing. Let's go back to Genesis in thoughts. Jacob is blessed and given his brother's birthright. Esau is no mug. Esau knew that Jacob cannot now be unblessed. So he cried bitterly, Dad, Father, do you not have any more blessings? The blessing has gone out. So, in the contemporary world, hear me, you decide to make an honest woman of your wife. You ask her to marry you. And you invite your neighbors and your friends and relatives, and they all come. And more so, you invite the king of the universe to bless the wedding. That's what we normally do when we get married. And so the king, that's Yahweh, blesses the married because this is the wife of your youth. That's what Malachi wants us to know in chapter 2, the wife of your youth. He blesses that marriage. So things are not going well now, perhaps a year or two later. So you go downtown Fort Lauderdale, in London, Miami, New York, and you ask a secular judge to undo what the divine judge has just blessed. Can it be done? Foolish Galatians. Be done. High courts binds lower courts. You appeal to a higher court. You don't appeal to a lower court. So if Yah has blessed your marriage, how can you go downtown, a secular judge who knows nothing about what's going on, and say you're divorced? You might be divorced in this life, but in heaven it's recorded that you're still married. I know that people don't like to hear the truth because truth is offensive. Truth is exclusive. So there are many people walking around thinking they're married and they're not. And many think they're divorced and they're not, based on the word. Did he not say that? They said it to Yeshua, didn't they? They said, can a man divorce his wife for anything? He said, no. They said, well, Moses gave us permission. They're referring to Deuteronomy chapter 24. He said, but it was never so in the beginning. Genesis 2:4, he referred them to it. He said, so does a man leave his mother and his father and join to his wife, and they become how many fleshes? One flesh, singular. And it's a lifetime experience. But the culture says, oh, you can, get rid of that old model of a wife that you have, or old model of a husband, and get a new model. There's some new design out now. Oh, there's some new design of a wife. They don't cover their heads anymore, these new designs. And their ears are full of decoration. We call them earrings. And bright nail varnishes, that's how they dress. You need to get one of those models. Yeshua said, it was not so in the beginning. Not so. So Balaam realizes that he's being paid. And we'll close this thing now. He realizes that he's being paid, but Yah will not allow him to curse Israel. So he has to figure a way out to do this. He says, if I could bring the Moabites and the Israelites together and have them mingle in a party, but the predominance of it would be Moabite secular lifestyle, then I get them. I win both. I get the money and I obtain or achieve my objective. So it says, and they came in and invited them to the sacrifice of their idols. My goodness. Surely, you must remember Mount Sinai. Thou shalt have no other Yah but me. Make no idols at all. Don't bow down to them. No. But music is something that sometimes provoke people. You're passing by and, the music sound and your feet begin to applaud you. You don't want to move, but that's music. Because if you recall, Satan was the covering cherub and he was a built musician. He knows every chord and the sounds. And so it's not too difficult, even through some of these contemporary songs, to deceive young people because they don't know his history. He's a trickster. He's a serpent. He wraps around your neck and then he whispers in your ear and you think that he's with you. And when he causes you to sin, he goes to Yeshua and he complains about you. Yes, he is that kind of a person. And so the word here is letting us know that that kind of ecumenicalism is not good. And so it says they worship idols, and Israel consecrated himself to Baal Pegor. In your Bible it says Baal Pehor, meaning this was a local idol. The Baal of Peor is like saying the king of a particular area. He was the Baal of Peor. The area was Peor, but the idol was Baal. As I was thinking through this, I think of that song that Paul McCartney rendered, the Mull of Kintyre. Remember that song? I'm not saying anything wrong with that song, but he was talking about an area in Scotland that, the Mull of Kintyre, I mean, a parcel, a peninsula, a piece of land. But it came to mind simply to say the Bale of Peor, the mayor of, the deacon of. And so this is what they worship. Whereupon the wrath of Yah was kindled against Israel, and Yah said to Moses, take all their leaders of the people and make a public example of them. Did you take the leaders and make a public example of them? For Yahweh in the face of the sun, so shall the wrath of Yah be turned away from Israel. Then Moshe said to the tribes of Israel, kill ye. Do what? Kill ye everyone him of his family who had consecrated himself to Belhegor. And behold, there came a man of the children of Israel. Listen to this. A man who came from the children of Israel, who conducted his brother to a Midianitish woman in the sight of Moses and before all the congregation of the sons of Israel, while they were weeping at the door of the tabernacle of the testimony. Understand what's going on here. The children of Israel understood that they have heard. They made a big mistake. And now some of them are mourning over it. They're remorseful. And this demure of a man brings in this Midianitish woman into his tent in the eyes of Moses. That's what he says. It's in the word here. Before all the congregation, he didn't care. That's all barefaced, naked, barefooted kind of attitude he had. People walk in sometimes in churches and they don't care how they look, because in their blinded eyes, they look good. And so this man came in. Verse 7, upon seeing this Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, the priest started up from among the congregation, and taking a javelin in his hand, went after the man, the Yisraelite, into the bedchamber, and ran them through, both the man, the Israelite, quite through, and the woman in her belly. You don't have to have a degree in discernment to understand what was happening here. The man was thrusted through with the javel, and the javel went through the man into the woman's belly. The writer here is merely trying to be cordial with language and be decent. What he's telling you, they were being intimate in front of Moses and the congregation. And Eleazar saw this and thrust him through. We go to church today and we see all kind of behavior, and not even a deacon, an elder. Nobody would bat an eyelid. We just leave them as it is. And the word says when Eleazar did that, it stopped the plague in the camp. I ask you this day, who will stop the plague in the churches? Who? Some bishops don't seem to care. The pastors don't care. And if we should move to the synagogue, do they care at all either? You understand now why Yeshua walked out of them and says, your house is now left to you desolate. And so it reminds me now that in growing up, in school, as a young man, I was introduced to the book in literature, I believe, Lord of the Flies, William Golding. Now, this was a dystopian debut novel by William Golding, whereby a group of young men were stranded in a desert island. And in the effort to manage themselves, the whole thing fell into a chaos, Lord of the Flies. But many people watch and they watch the film and they read about Lord of the Flies, but very few people, they read it benignly, lovingly. But very few understand that this can be traced back to the ancient Canaanite god of Baal, Lord of the Flies. This is why when you read in Matthew 10, we read that they said, Yeshua, when he healed, remember that miracle he did when he healed the deaf man, the mute, and they said to him, but he does this by way of Beelzebub. Beelzebub means Lord of the Flies. He's saying he did it by way of the Canaanite god of Baal. That's what they said. So I'm just showing you how our ancestors behave and how these things have seeped downstream from Sinai, where the purity of the water was. And now we're down here in the stream of Laodicea, and we're drinking, not knowing something fell into the water, and the water is polluted. We don't know that. And that's why Yeshua had to write to us in Revelation and told us that, hey, here is your portrait, here is your mugshot. If you don't book up, when you come to court, you're going to go to prison. Are you with me? And we're here twiddling our thumbs, asking questions like, well, which church should I go to? Oh, should I be a Methodist? Should I be a Catholic, Episcopalian? What's the true church? My question is, how many churches are there? It's one body. What you're looking for is a denomination. There's one body. And all you have to do is to go back to the word and see whether or not that denomination meets the criteria laid down in the word. Simple. So, what church? No, that's not the question at all that you should be asking. That's not what you should be asking, because the whole thing is about Yeshua. He is the only one, the only way, the truth, and the life. And so because you have no Phineas in your church, you just continue to whore yourself. You have become, in your own eyes and in other people's eyes, though you don't know, a religious prostitute. Because you're doing things that Yah says should not be done. But in your little mind, you think that you have a place reserved in the kingdom, and you're just waiting for translation you call the rapture. It's not in the word. Not in the word at all. And so let's really bring it to a close now on Revelation chapter 18. Revelation 18 and verse 23. Let's just 23. The word says that you had remained in the church and you had drunk from this woman, but the time has come now, because the angel is hurrying up, because he's told that, hey, you got to seal some people, because the wrath is coming. The wrath of Yah is coming. And therefore, these people who are sincere, they need to get out of Babylon, get out of the false church, get out of the churches that are practicing things that they're not cogent with the text. Are you with me? They're not cogent at all. Yah said, do the Sabbath for me and do the feast day. You've been doing this for years and think you're in, and you come in your best dress and your best suit, best spoke, from Savile Row in London, and you're just well dressed. Yes, just come out. Get out. Why? Because you are dressed no more than those at Mount Sinai was dressed, naked. You have clothes on, but you don't have righteousness on. You're naked. So, verse 23, and the light of the candle shall shine no more at all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom, and the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee, for thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were they nations deceived, or deceived. Of course, people have self-select themselves as remnants. You've heard that statement before. Well, we are the remnant, we're the true church, and therefore we are it. Whatever the it is, that it factor, whatever it is, let's see what it is in Revelation 12 and verse 17. And the word says, and the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood, and the dragon cast out of his mouth, and the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of Yahweh and have the testimony of Yeshua, Messiah. And he stood up on the sand of the sea. That's what a remnant look like. People who keep commandments. You can't be keeping a different day, a different set of feasts. Yeah, it says, keep my feast days and list them in Leviticus chapter 23. And you give him Easter, you give him Halloween, you give him Christmas. Come on. Logic suggests that that's wrong. So I hope that your empty vessels have been filled by the word of Yah, and now we can drink even at the banquet. In Yeshua's name I pray. Amen. Hallelujah.